start recording, so you'll have to give me permission. And then we'll close this. And wait a minute, where did you go? There you are. And then I like the way you said use this edited version. I don't want to use this long version. So, and just so that I've got your pronunciation of your name, it's Tayrn.
Tayrn. Mm-hmm.
Tayrn. Okay. I don't want to say
like,
yeah.
It's okay. It's like Karen, but with a T.
Karen, you know what? I have a friend whose name is Karen. And I used to tell her, say it's like car in the garage. How you say her name, Karen? She's like, no, it's like Karen, but with a, and I'm like, no, it's not like Karen. You know, it's maybe with an N, with an I. Karen, you know, I'm like, I mean, she's so funny. I'm like, no, that's not how it looks. So anyway, so we will start everything now, and we'll go. And hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of Your Time Is Now, where we show you how to make money and be successful in any real estate market. And today we have I'm super excited about this guest because I'm going to learn from this interview because she does something that I know nothing about. So not only are you going to learn, I'm going to learn as well. And today we have Tayrn Dixon, and she got started with her real estate career doing what we call STRs, which are short-term rentals, back in 2021. And, you know, she was interested in real estate investing. She's just started researching it. So she said, you know what? I'm going to purchase a property. She bought something in the Fayetteville market, which is here in North Carolina. And then she said, hey, this passive income thing is pretty great. So she scaled from 1 to 8 using the arbitrage model here in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we are. Now she is the SuperHost status, and she's going to explain that to us as well, because I have no clue what that is. And she has maintained this accolade throughout the entire time she's been a host. Most recently, she is now offering short-term rental management services to others who want to take their time back, or simply, you know, don't want to get involved with short-term rentals, but they want to own them and enjoy the income from them. You know, and she is one who truly believes that this business, if it is done correctly, and that is the key, is one of the best ways to maximize your cash flow. And she encourages anyone who's interested to reach out to her with questions, as she's always happy to help. And that's why she's here today. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And when I said I am, you know, I want to learn about this because I know nothing about arbitrage. I know very little about short-term rentals. What I do know, everyone, is what I've learned from Tayrn and some other people going to some meetings at TRIA around here. And you've heard me talk about TRIA before, so we won't have a long discussion about that. But one thing I want everybody who's listening and watching to know is, are you a real estate agent? Do you have a real estate license?
No.
No. You not real. And are you do you have millions of dollars sitting back as a real estate investor that you can just throw at this property and that property and all of that?
Oh, I wish.
So let me get this straight for everybody that's watching going, I'd love to be in real estate investing, but I don't have a real estate license. I don't have any money. Tayrn started her career with no real estate license, no trust fund or huge amount of residual income sitting back there.
Yep, minimal capital. Yeah,
minimal capital. So tell us what happened. Tell us your story. How did you get into this and say, you know what, I think I'm going to take the jump and I'm going to do this?
Okay, so it all started back in 2021. I was working in my corporate job. My background is in tech sales, and as much as I love sales, I just was not having like a true connection with what I was selling. And it's like every single week I was just crawling to get through the week, and I was sick of it. And I wanted, years prior, I had actually started a chocolate business. And I don't know if I've told you that or not.
No, I haven't heard that, but you got me thinking. I'm like, that's fun, so.
Yeah, I actually started it while I was in grad school. But anyways, I did that for several years. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed especially working for myself, and that's gonna kind of tie into what I'm getting at here. I love entrepreneurship. I love even if it means me working harder, I like owning my own time. And that's what like drew me to that, not only that business, but also eventually short-term rentals. Because, you know, in this corporate job, and I had a, great boss. It wasn't the company, it wasn't the management. I loved everyone. It was truly, I did not have an authentic connection to what I was selling.
Yep.
And I just did not want to continue spending my time doing that. So I started researching passive income, became quite obsessed with it, and I came across real estate investing as a form of passive income. So, much like most people, I came across Bigger Pockets, and I learned that there were like Bigger Pockets meetups, and I looked up if there was one in my area, and lo and behold, there was. And I went to my first one in July of 2021. And by this point in time, I did have some capital saved up, and I got introduced to the guy who mentored me, Joshua Jensen, and he taught me not only like the basics of how the business works, but a step above that, and how to automate it and make it as passive as possible. And just so everyone is clear, oftentimes the word passive and short-term rentals gets tied together in the same sentence, and it's only passive if you hire someone else to run it, to run the operations of it.
And that's what I wanted to explain. Tell people what you mean by passive income, because people think, when people hear passive income, they think of someone just, laying on the beach and this money just flowing to them, and all that. But in real estate investing, so tell us what you describe as passive income along with this. So they're on the same page going forward.
So I would say passive income is income that you bring in that requires little to no trade of time. Right. So you're taking your capital, you're putting it into whatever vehicle you choose to put it into, and then you're getting a return on that investment. And there's a spectrum of passivity.
So it's not income without work, because the work goes in to set that up. I think that's where the connection. So we've got that, and you've got, your short-term rentals, but you're wanting passive income, and you're like, how do I do this? You meet everybody at Bigger Pockets. So what happened next?
Okay. So I purchased my first property a few months later in September. It was actually the day after my, 29th birthday. It was like a little birthday present to myself.
Yeah. Let's buy a house.
Yeah.
Where I don't live.
Exactly. Yeah. It was very exciting. So basically, I did what everyone does when they go to purchase a property for short-term rentals. I went and did all the ordering of the furniture and the decor. I paid someone to help me get it all set up. And I actually ended up hiring a property manager at the time. Because I think at this point in time, I was just slowly, maybe not even yet, had learned about how to self-manage. So I had hired someone to manage it for me, and that didn't really work out. I just was wanting more of a return. And simultaneously I was learning how to self-manage. So it just didn't really make sense to keep them on. But yeah, that's how it all started. It all started with me purchasing that first house in Fayetteville. And then when I, really got my feet wet and learned how to do everything and just run the business from A to Z, I branched off into Raleigh, and specifically using the arbitrage method, which if you want me, I can go ahead and explain what that means.
Absolutely, because I remember when I learned about arbitrage, and I'm sure right now that people are going who've never heard this, they're going, what does arbitrage mean? Does it, it almost sounds like I don't know. The first thing I thought about it, I thought, arbitrage, it sounds, are they tearing the house down? What are they? It just sounded, the word I didn't understand is related to real estate. And I'd missed the meeting. And then my business partner, she said, you know, there's a lot of money to be made using the arbitrage method. I'm like, what does this mean? So then I actually started looking it up, and I went to another meeting talking about it. So tell everybody how you have 8 properties now, but you only own one of them, but they're your properties that you only 1, 2, but you're making money off of them using arbitrage. So
correct. Yeah. So technically at this point I'm managing 9.
oh,
The
okay.
9th one is a co-hosting property, which we'll talk about that in a minute.
That's another it's a whole thing.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, especially, you know, the audience here is I believe mainly people who are just getting started, maybe don't have a lot of capital. That is a whole other conversation and avenue that they can explore, that, you know, if they want to scale, and it's actually, you know, in many ways less risk and no capital needed at all.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, with the 7 properties, first I did a single family house in Raleigh. I believe you're familiar with Chris Papadopoulos, right? He's in Tria. Yeah, Chris gave me my start.
Okay, well, there you go. That's a good person to get your start with. So
yes,
we can get him on here to talk to everybody. So, but you know.
yeah, so I mean, and this is a very good example, right? Like if you can make a connection with someone who has multiple properties and you prove yourself on the one, they're very likely to want you to rent more. So and that's exactly what happened. I rented one, and then a few months later, 4 months later, something like that, I'm like, hey, I'm ready to take on more if you have more for me. And that's exactly what happened. And that's a big reason why I scaled as fast as I did.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing. You just said you rented a house. So arbitrage is renting a house that
yes, I apologize.
that you rent out. You know, it's hard to wrap your head around the whole idea, but we, you know, that. So tell everybody, you know, if someone wants to arbitrage a house, what does that mean to do?
Yeah. So arbitraging is really just when you go and approach a property owner, let's say who has a listing for rent. You reach out to them and you explain, like, you know, I'd like to rent your property just like any other traditional tenant. I will pay the exact same rent. I will sign the exact same lease. But instead of me living here, I'm going to actually outfit it with furniture, make it look real beautiful, and then put it on the market for short-term stays. And the benefit to that is not only, you know, is nothing changing with what you're already expecting from your tenant, but it's also being professionally cleaned multiple times a month. And guess what? My business relies on the condition of your property being in like tip-top shape. So it's as close to a guarantee as it possibly gets that the property will stay in pristine condition, as opposed to someone who's living there and it's like, you know, it's a toss-up.
Absolutely. And so, and I've heard different people who talk about arbitrage, because I'm sure some people who are watching this have never heard of that are probably going, now wait a minute, I'm going to rent a house, but I'm not going to live in it, and they're going to let me rent it out and do this. And it's like, okay, so how do I make money on that? Because, you know, and that's when you're going into the short-term rentals, the Airbnbs, the VRBOs, and all that. So when someone's doing that, let's talk about, they're like, okay, I get it. So I've got to have, number one, you got to be able to cover the rent in case it doesn't rent. But let's talk about when you said I'm outfitting it. Now you've got this house that has your appliances and stuff in it, you know, certain appliances, you know, is when you rent property, sometimes you don't get the washer, dryer, you know, things like that. So when you're outfitting, what is it that you've got this property, you're going to arbitrage it. When you describe outfitting, what's the next step after you've secured the property?
Yeah, so the next step is, I don't know how granular you want me to get, but in a nutshell,
yeah.
yeah, you go into the property, you take your measurements of like the layout of how you want your furniture, and then you start, either you hire someone to do the design or you do it yourself. There are definitely two schools of thought with that. I won't get into that, but anyway, so you have to start planning what it is you want your listing to look like, and then you get to work shopping. It's that's the fun part. So yeah, that's the next step. You start shopping for your furniture, and it's everything from your sofa, your coffee table, your mattress, your dining table, everything.
Everything that if someone expects to stay in that property for 2 days or 2 weeks, everything they need to stay in there.
Yeah,
Now,
cookware. Yep.
oh yeah, and people don't think about that. Cookware, forks, knives, pot holders, things, little, what do you need to live? Pretty much,
Yeah,
What,
you're basically building a home from scratch.
Yep, absolutely. Now, when with the beginning we were talking about, you don't need real estate license to do this because you're not selling property, you're renting property. So it depends on which state you're in, because that's what I always try to clarify with everybody when we're talking about real estate investing. If you're selling someone else's property, you have to have a real estate license. But when you're renting someone else's property, you don't have to have a real estate license. And also in North Carolina, if you manage real estate, for other people, for a landlord, you are supposed someone has to have a real estate license in that company to run it but you can co-host. You don't need a real estate license for that. And so you're hosting these other 8 properties yourself, whether you own them or you're renting them. You are the host. You're the Airbnb, you're the person they rent it from and all that. But now you are co-hosting. So what does that mean when people say, well, wait a minute, I'm not ready to jump in. What's this co-host thing mean? So what does tell us about that?
Yeah, and just to be transparent, there's a lot of overlap between co-hosting and property management. Where there's structurally some differences. For example, I don't handle any of the revenue. Like all of the revenue flows directly to the property owner, and then I invoice them for my service, right? That's a big difference. Yeah, anyways, I can share some details later, but the point is with co-hosting, you are simply there to act on behalf of the property owner in terms of like guest communication, coordinating cleaners. Occasionally, if there's ever like a repair, you can of course get the property owner involved, but you're much like an assistant in a sense, but really you're taking all of the load of handling a property firsthand off of their plate.
Yeah, exactly. So if and what we meant, I'm taking notes here, and what we were talking about is like, okay, so we have people here that are, whether they're real estate agents, whether they're investors, or they're like, okay, I'm going to start, because everybody, you and I run into people all the time at TRIA meetings. When you tell people that you manage Airbnbs, you have Airbnbs, 9 times out of 10 they're like, I've always thought about getting into that. Everybody's always thought about getting into that. So it's important. There's a lot more, and we've made it sound fairly simple, and in some cases it is, if you know what you're doing. If you and guys, this is not something to don't run out and go arbitrage your property. We're trying to kind of give you some ideas. Go get some education. But what I want to talk about, when she mentioned she's a SuperHost, that is, I have found during my research, because I do not have any Airbnbs right now. I'm actually going to go look at a property that I think will be a great Airbnb, and we'll talk off camera about that. But I know as a real estate agent all these years that I just can't go buy it, outfit it, and stick it on Airbnb and expect to be, no matter how great it is, at the top of the list, or people pick me, or Airbnb with their algorithms put me in. That the benefit of having someone like Tayrn is she already has that SuperHost status. So what is the benefit of someone saying, okay, now they've got this property, I need to find someone who is a SuperHost that has done this to co-host with me? What is the benefit for the property owner? What's the benefit all around, as far as the consumer and everyone?
So the benefit is, first of all, there are only, like, out of all the hosts that exist on the platform, only 15% of that group is SuperHost.
Okay.
So it's not something that is like just tossed around.
Yeah.
They don't just hand it to everyone. It does mean a lot. And what happens is when a listing is tied to someone who has SuperHost status, that listing gets boosted to the top.
Okay.
And why does Airbnb do that? They do that because when people go on that platform, they want them to continue coming back to Airbnb, right? And when you have a good experience with a listing versus a bad experience with a listing, you're going to be more likely to come back. And SuperHost have that track record of providing a good, solid, reliable experience. And that's why they always boost them to the top.
So if someone, wanted to reach out to you and say, hey, Tayrn, I'm buying a property, I'm going to SuperHost with you. Tell them what that entails, because now people are probably going, okay, that sounds good. I'll go get a SuperHost, and not to get too much into incomes and everything, but everyone says, like you were saying, you decided to host yourself instead of have someone doing it. You wanted to keep more of the cash flow. And I want people to understand these are very good real estate investments, but you've got to be able to get them rented. You've got to get people in there, and that's where someone, with your expertise comes in. So how does that affect, as far as if you're a SuperHost and you can rent it, what do you think is the what's the word I'm looking for here? Let me think about it. The increase in revenue as to for someone does, like if you have a property managed by SuperHost that is not managed by SuperHost, and then if I partnered up with you or anyone else, where does my income play in with that, as far as
So what I'll tell you is the general rule of thumb is you will receive 2 to 2.5 times the rent or the revenue, let's say, of doing it as a short-term rental versus a long-term rental.
Okay.
That's the general rule of thumb. Now, I want to communicate this very clearly, though. There are some tools out there that will help you do like a market analysis and help you understand what your property, you basically type in your address and it'll give you a projected revenue. And sometimes that revenue is spot on. Sometimes it is conservative, significantly conservative. And sometimes it can be a little bit higher. I've not seen it be a lot higher. It's usually spot on, or it's actually conservative. Now, caveat there. A lot of people are getting into the space, right? It is getting more saturated, which means more competition, which means you have to provide, just like any other business, right? You have to provide the most value to the market in order to get top pick, right? To get booked first and to get booked at the highest rate possible compared to the other listings, right? So what that means is, how do you be competitive? Well, there's several factors. The location of your property. I mean, location. We've all heard it 1,000 times.
Yep.
It's no different than any other strategy in real estate. Short-term rental is the same. You need a good location. You need a property, like the bones of the property needs to be like curb appeal, for example. The more unique and the more interesting your property is, the better it's going to do. So that amenities matter. For example, are you going to be pet friendly or are you not? Are you going to offer a grill? Are you going to offer a hot tub? Are you going to offer a desk for people who come to work remotely, or are you not? Things like that. The design, is your design going to look like everyone else's and get lost in the masses, or is it going to be unique and pop off the screen? And then of course, reviews. This is people don't realize this business is so heavily dependent on good reviews. And by the way, that's one of the criteria that Airbnb has for SuperHost. You have to maintain a certain average review, like it's a review rating, and that's one of the qualifiers for that.
Well, and that's the thing is like if someone, if someone's brand new to this and they're like, well, I'm gonna get in real estate investing and I didn't think I could rent something and then turn around re-rent it out. That sounds easy. I'm going to do that and I'm going to start making, I'm going to rent this thing out. Airbnbs where we are in Raleigh, this whole triangle area, they do very well. If you're in a remote area, research it very well if you're watching this, because, if you're, I've got a little house in Irwin and we thought about keeping, and this is an hour from Raleigh, but it's 20 minutes from Campbell University. So it may work if we keep it, it may not, it just depends. So make sure you reviewed that. But if someone, let's say they want to talk to a landlord, it's like, okay, great. I don't need any cash. Well, I need money to outfit the house, but that can be done, fairly reasonably, depending on, what you're doing. And, I'll give everybody out there a little hint right now. Every time I go to TJ Maxx or Home Goods or Marshalls or something like that, if I see something that's marked down considerably and it's Home Goods or something like that, I buy it and put it in my storage unit because we're looking at putting Airbnb. So I started accumulating my stuff on sale, that we can use, even housewares, things like that. But let's say you're going to approach this landlord and people are like, this sounds like a good idea, but what kind of landlord is going to, do that? Now, you were very beneficial. We mentioned you rent some of the houses from Chris Papadopoulos. And guys, if you're in the Raleigh area, he's a huge real estate investor. And we know him through, our networking and everything here in this area. But let's just say someone's on Zillow and they're like, okay, I'm going to start doing this. And I'm going to contact this landlord because this house is in a great location and I really think it can be a good Airbnb. How do you, we talked about when you approach the landlord, I'm going to keep it, it's going to stay cleaner. Any little defects that come up, I'm not going to call you. If the tile bar falls down, I'm going to fix it. I'm not going to fix an HVAC or roof leak, but, I'm going to fix all the little things that you would be called on. But how do you tell, number one, what is, the number of landlords that are approached about this? What do you think the percentages that say, oh, no way, I'm not going to do it? And then how do you, what's different as far as, because when you're renting from someone else and then they say, oh, this has been a good tenant and I've noticed that she's had people in there, every night for 27 of the 30 nights in the average of a month, she's making $3,000 a month off of my, cash in her pocket, off of my $1,500 a month rent that I'm charging her. I'm going to go up, So what are some of the things like you have to protect yourself with? And do you do longer term leases like 2 years or 3 years? So how do you set yourself up for this?
Yeah, so you mentioned several things, and I'm gonna touch on all of them.
Yeah.
So one, you mentioned how many landlords are even open to it, right? I would say, let's say you lined up 10 landlords. I would say, and a lot of it has to do with how you pitch yourself.
Yeah.
And I can help anyone who wants some assistance with that. It's I would say it's roughly around 5 to 6, or at least a yes or maybe.
Okay.
And then the rest are hard no. That's been my experience. I would say 1 to 2 are sure, I'm open to it. And then there's going to be some there on the line, and you've got to do some, a little bit of convincing or just hang in there with them and answer the questions they have. Now, I'll be quite honest with you. They're going to ask you your experience. And when you're first getting started, that's going to be the most difficult part. And the best advice I can give you is you need to find someone like me and make friends with someone like me. And when you go to pitch these, first of all, you need to learn how to actually do it. Instead of just like listening. It's best that you get mentored, just like I had Joshua. You're going to want to be able to say something when they ask you, well, what's your experience doing this? Have you done this with it? What other houses are you doing this with? And your answer is, oh, I don't have any. They're not going to like that answer. I'm telling you that right now. So you do need to find people, even if it doesn't have to be an arbitrager like me necessarily. It could be any, if you have anybody in your circle that is already a host of an Airbnb, get them to teach you the business and take that information and say, well, listen, I was mentored by da 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 da. I know this business now very well, and you're asking this question because you're worried that I'm not either A, going to pay you your rent, or B, I'm not going to take care of your property. Neither of those things are true. You will absolutely receive your rent. It doesn't matter if I have to go into my own pocket, you will receive your rent. If I am, that, and that's, I won't go down the rabbit hole. I can go into a whole spiel about that, but
there's all kinds of rabbit holes here, but that's okay. That's what
yeah,
podcast. We'll have to do another one and say, okay, here we are now, and I'm sure we'll get questions on this one, and then we'll do another one and answer those. But
right, yeah, the salesperson is in me is like, let's talk about how to handle objections.
yeah,
but anyways, yeah, so you need to be confident as best you can. And I know it's very nerve-wracking when you have someone that you really want to do this so bad, and they're like trying to slam the door in your face. It's nerve-wracking to try and turn the bus around, but you have to have confidence that you will absolutely take care of their property. You will treat it as if it is your property, and on your honor as a man or woman, you need to abide by your agreement to pay the rent. Yep. And assure them that they will receive their rent, no different than any other tenant.
Now, what happens when, and I mentioned this quick, and there were a lot of points. You are correct. I threw a lot of questions out at you, fairly quickly. As I said, they were popping in my head because I'm learning as I'm doing this. So let's see.
You asked about the
rent, yeah. If they're looking at you, or like they go on Airbnb and they're like, I'm gonna find my house. How much is she? And she's like, oh, she's getting $250 a night. Well, when her lease is up, we're gonna renegotiate. Has that happened? And if it does happen, how do you do it? Because you don't want to put all your time and energy and then in a year go, now I got to move this house out. Because that's $2,000 or $3,000. With renters movers to go into another property. So how do you protect yourself against that, or try to protect yourself against that?
Right. And one thought just popped in my head, just going back to what we were just discussing, to at least just break even your, this is how you can assure the property owner as well, at least to just break even. It should only take you maybe like 10 to 12 days of getting people in the door to at least break even. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure that the audience was aware that is something that you can tuck away in the back of your head, but also communicate to the property owner. It doesn't take that many days of occupancy to at least pay your rent.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might not make profit, but to at least pay your rent. Now, your question about how to protect yourself from a property owner that is, getting a little green with it.
Greedy, it's like, with that, yeah. So, because I'm sure it happens,
So what I'll, the first thing I'll mention is property owners, they don't see, unless they want to go stalk Airbnb and see what the listing is doing, they don't really know what you're bringing in. I mean, and to be quite honest with you, there are months during the year when it's slow season where you really are not making, you truly are maybe just breaking even. So they just don't tend to, they want it, once that you sign the lease and you start sending them their money, they tend to move on with their lives. I've not had anyone try to stalk me, stalk my listing to try to figure out how much I'm making. And here's the other thing, right? This is how I approach business, and I expect it out of, I have this expectation of anyone I'm in business with. I only want to do business with people who want not just themselves to win, but me as well, vice versa. I want everyone to be happy. And if someone is taking that stance where they're trying to just be unreasonable and either demand more, or first of all, when you sign a lease, the agreed upon rent amount is in writing. That's basically in stone until that lease ends.
Mhm.
Now, if that lease ends and they want to go up $400 or $500, you have the freedom to walk away. And if they really wanted to get into the business themselves and make short-term rental money, then they better be ready to give up a lot of time, because it's not passive.
Yeah.
It's not passive. Now that goes back to hiring someone like myself to co-host the property and take care of all of it for you. But that, if you think that, you can just kick out someone who's arbitraging and fill it up with your own furniture and think that you're going to have the same level of passiveness that you had when you just had a long-term renter, it's not going to happen. Yeah.
And wow, I try to keep all the episodes to like 30 minutes, and we have talked over so many things that we're no, this is wonderful. It's like, okay, I have all these other questions here, that I want to ask, and with that, but it's amazing what I have just learned, sitting here talking with you about that. And so one thing I do want to touch on, because there's a lot of people, they're probably like, okay, we've got the house, we got the single family home. So you still, you've got short-term tenants in there. So they're not like someone that's renting a house long-term. They're not mowing the grass. They're not, cleaning the house. So those are expenses that you have to have out. So let's talk about, things like yard maintenance and things like that. If people say, wait a minute, I think I'll just go rent a condo or a townhouse, and then I will arbitrage that. But then again, we're talking about, we get, it kind of breaks into their monthly income, because you have to pay your HOA. Sometimes the property owner pays HOA. Sometimes they want you to pay HOA with things like that. But if someone's looking for a property, and my big scare with condos and townhomes are their HOAs are more broader, and sometimes they'll say no short-term rentals, because you're living in closer proximity than you are within a single family home with that. But if someone says, okay, I'm ready to get going, I like this, I'm going to call Tayrn, and I'm going to have her co-host with me. What type of properties should someone, like, if you said I'm getting started, what would be there's no ideal, but we talked about your, making it a little bit different, and that's a whole nother episode about the new Airbnb. Oh my God, they call it the OMG, the oh my gosh, oh my God, whatever you want to call it, section, with that now. So, because people do like unique, as you said, you want it to pop out. But if I said, okay, I'm ready to go, what should I look for? Where do I start? I'm going to arbitrage. I don't want to buy anything. I want to arbitrage. How, where would you say someone, okay, this is your first step. This is what, besides calling you, what is the first step?
So the first step, and I can actually share my screen and show it to you if you'd like me to.
No, yeah, let me give you permission to do that. So go ahead. Okay. Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, this is great.
All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to spit out any random address in Raleigh. Anyone.
Okay. Oh, I got one. Hang on. I do have one. I'm actually better not say. Well, by the time this airs, I might already own this house. So, 1406 Oakwood Avenue in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Ooh, I love the word Oakwood already.
I know, girl. Let me tell you. That came across my screen as something today. This would not be a rent. This would be a purchase. But okay. This is
1406 Oakwood Avenue. That's the address. Okay, and how many bedrooms is it?
Well, I don't know. I haven't gone to look at. Oh, it is 2 bedrooms. It is 1 bathroom.
Okay, then we're on the right track then.
Okay.
Okay, can you see my screen?
It's the blue house right there.
Right there, right? Okay. So what I did was, I probably should have went through it first. Okay, so the website is called airdna.co. Just forget this for a second. airdna.co, and you're going to create an account. It's free at all times, but to unlock certain parts of the tool, it does require subscription, but I'll get to that in a second. When you log in, you create an account, you're going to go to the menu sidebar, and you're going to click on Rentalizer. So that's where we're at right now. Okay. So what I did was I typed in that address you just gave me, and I verified that this is the correct bedroom and bathroom count. And this right here does matter. So I have it set to 4 guests, and right now it's projecting 39,000 as the annual revenue.
Okay.
But if I change it to 6, and sometimes it doesn't change, but sometimes it does. It did not. This time it did not. But oftentimes it will. It usually will go up. The more guests that you are able to house, it tends to go up. But regardless, so this is going to give you a ballpark idea of, you know, what it's projected to make. So you take that number, you divide that by 12, and that's going to give you a monthly projected revenue number, gross.
So, and then you decide, okay, will this work? You know, if they're, you know, so if we're looking at 39.4 and, you know, someone's wanting, you know, $2,500 a month rent, you're not actually making that much money on this property unless you can think of a way to, you know, increase that average 39.4, correct? Is that what you're?
Yes. Yeah. You know, here's what I also want everyone to understand. Not every property is going to make 2.5 times what you'd make as a long-term rental. Not every property is meant to be a short-term rental. And you need to base when you acquire a property and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to get revenue into this property? Am I going to do just one traditional long-term tenant? Am I going to do rent by the room long-term? Am I going to do short-term? I'm going to do mid-term, and that's a whole other thing. You have to figure out what is the house. Let the house speak to you. Yeah. Because, you know, you have to be very careful about your numbers, because what you don't want to happen is you don't want to go pour in thousands of dollars of in furniture and yada 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 to you know, outfit this property for short-term stays, and it's just for whatever reason. It could be location, it could be the neighborhood, it could be the market's just overly saturated. You don't want to make that mistake. And, you know, I will say this, I have a friend, she is an amazing host. Her name is B, if she's here listening.
So she might be.
She is phenomenal about squeezing everything out of a property that you possibly can, basically optimizing it, making it look as, you know, as unique as possible, as well designed as possible, adding amenities, just really investing in it hard. And instead of 39,000, she works magic, and she's able to oftentimes get it much more than that. So I've done everything I can to like learn from her and you know, apply that to my own properties, but she's very good about that. And a lot of people who, you know, take that route and they take the risk of going the extra mile, it does tend to pay off.
So that's the first. So what I'm hearing from you is, number one, just because you think it's a great property, just do your numbers, do your math, because it all comes down to the numbers, because you are going to have some outlay, you know, if you are, you know, unless you have a warehouse full of furniture, that's really cool and, you know, modern and fits in with there. And then, but I think the biggest takeaway from all this is, if you're just learning how to do it, or you've not approached this market before, so most people watching this have not, it sounds like to me, before I even step my foot out, I need to find a good co-host or someone to mentor me like you with that. And with that, we're going to let y'all know that in the show notes will be all of Tayrn's contact information. She even gave me her phone number to give everybody. So, you know, we may put that in there. We may not. Depends on how many people she wants calling her. But her website address, her email address, all of that will be in there. So if you are thinking, you're like, hey, I really want to do this, you know, give her a call. She'll be happy to coach you, talk with you, you know, partner with you, you know, and see if it works for you. And with that, so final words, what do you want us to, you know, if they take away one thing, what is it from you?
It would be figure out why you're interested in real estate investing to begin with. You then, from there, you need to determine what type of time investment you are able or willing to do, and how fast you need to move towards your goal, the outcome you're trying to get to, and then make your decision on which investing strategy to go with based on those answers. For example, I wanted to get out of my corporate job as quickly as possible. So I needed a vehicle that could get me that cash, like large amounts of cash flow as fast as possible. But if you like your job and that you're not trying to race out the door, you don't necessarily need to do short-term rentals, because it does require more work if you're going to self-manage. So that's, you need to be very self-aware of your situation, and be honest with yourself about what you can and cannot do, or what you're willing to do.
Okay, well that's a good final thought. That really is. So we're going to wrap up and say thank you to everyone who has joined us today on the Your Time Is Now podcast, where we're showing our goal here is to let everyone know that you can make money in real estate investing. It doesn't matter what the market is, doesn't matter what the news says. There's always an avenue, and hopefully we've educated you today on something you did not know about. We want to say thank you for Tayrn for stopping by and agreeing to join us today. And remember, all her information is going to be in the show notes. So reach out to her and visit my website, visit hers. And we just love to hear back from you. Give us a review, share this with people. And for now, we'll say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.